because Denzel basically kidnaps everyone in the hospital, shuts the doors, locks them in, says, hey, we gonna do something for my son.
So don't cry, mama, your baby boy is here. Go ahead, lean on my shoulders, I'll wipe away the tears. Know you're hurting inside, and the pain is deep. I'm here to answer your call, the cry of the streets.
Yo, what up, what up? It's your boy Alias. Another life is another story. You know the name. We'll get into the explanation for that later on. But welcome to the Alphamist. This is the first episode of this podcast I created. It's a solo podcast. Welcome. Thank you for chiming in and watching this. This first episode, I want to give you a little bit of the history and background of why I'm creating this podcast and what you could expect from it. All right. So thank you again for chiming in. Welcome, kings and queens, to the very first episode of the Alphamist. This is a place where self-discovery, transformation, and a little bit of magic come together. Think of it as part of storytelling, part reflection, and part motivation, all designed to help you grow, rise, and claim your crown. So, why did I create this podcast? As a kid growing up, born in the 70s, if you had a two-parent household, you were fortunate, blessed, especially where I come from. Although I did have a two-parent household, my parents were young when they had me, and they put a roof over my head, they put food in my mouth, so I was blessed in that sense. But again, being born to young parents in the 70s, being a provider, disciplinarian, all those sorts of things, protecting you was kind of the mindset, at least where I come from, for being what parenthood was about. What they didn't really have to offer was a lot of, experience, wisdom, nurturing, developing. So a lot of things I had to figure out. I had to figure out kind of quickly and early on my own, really. So born in the South Bronx, grew up in the streets of, New York City as well as Miami. You tend to grow up pretty fast, you learn a lot of things from the streets. So I created this podcast, hopefully to pay it forward to those who may not have a two-parent household, who may not have, parents who are able to nurture and teach them the things to be more successful in life. So I'm trying to share the knowledge and wisdom I've gained over, decades of living, basically paying it forward to those who can, take some value from it. I'm going to do a lot of storytelling. I want people to kind of learn vicariously through my experiences and hopefully save yourself some time, not to make the same mistakes that I may have made in life. So who's it for? It's for everyone, really. I'm a black man, so I have a certain affinity for other black men. I think, based on the American experience, we tend to need that mentoring, that knowledge, that fatherly figure more so than others. But truth be told, a lot of these lessons and stories I'm going to be sharing are really universal. So it's for pretty much everyone: black men, white men, Hispanic men, Asian men. It's for, black women, white women, Asian women, Hispanic women, everyone who is seeking to learn, to grow, looking for self-improvement, looking for personal development, looking for just growth in body, mind, spirit. That's who this podcast is for. Now, what makes me qualified to, do a podcast? Great question. So again, grew up kind of fast, learned a lot from the streets, South Bronx, Miami, Atlanta. I lived in a lot of places. But at the age of 17, I joined the Navy. Hadn't quite figured out what it is I wanted to do in my life just yet. I didn't want to work at, Wendy's or Burger King for the rest of my days. And although I may have been smart enough to go to college, where I came from, they really wasn't pushing SAT scores. They really wasn't pushing college applications. So even if I had gone down that road and filled some of those out, I didn't really see financial means to be able to pay for schooling. So for me, the best alternative was really to join the military. What that gave me was really a window of opportunity to learn a lot of things, get exposed to different, parts of the country, and gave me time to kind of go from a young boy to a man, so to speak. And from that, I was able to then kind of figure out more what I wanted to do in my life and kind of know who I was and what things motivated me, what things I found interest and passion in. I was always a pretty smart kid, so I was always a good test taker. I did well in the Navy. I thrived in it. Just was never fully passionate about it. But that's what kind of was my, boys to men opportunity by joining the military. But again, I'll share a lot more of those stories in time. But after getting out the Navy, I started off as a nuclear engineer, enlisted guy. I made all the way up to E5. I became a naval officer. Ultimately did 10 years in the Navy, decided, kind of my entrepreneurial spirit was awakened while I was in the Navy. So I got out, went back to New York. And just over the years, I've done a lot of things, from being a licensed financial advisor to an insurance agent, a certified life coach, marriage counselor. I did teaching once upon a time, real estate, serial entrepreneur, author, done a lot of things. So I feel pretty heavily qualified to impart some of that knowledge, experience, and wisdom with this audience. So that's, again, why I feel like I'm somewhat qualified to have this podcast and what you kind of can expect from that. Let's see. So the Alphamist is going to be very heavily Egyptian themed. I chose that as a theme for this podcast. One, the ancient Egyptians were one of the most advanced civilizations that ever really touched this earth. The original name for Egypt was Kemet, and the word Kemet actually translates as black land. So they say it was named after the dark, rich black soil of the land. Others feel that, Kemet meant the dark black people of the lands at that time. Either way, that civilization, that culture, I feel has left a lot of jewels and wisdom for us over the years. We're still trying to discover and understand some of the things that they were able to achieve and accomplish way back then. So I figured for this podcast, The Alphamist, what better thing to use than that? I'm also a member of Alpha Phi Alpha, so our fraternity, used a lot of Egyptian themed stuff in our branding as well. So the meaning of the name. Now, some of you might be asking, why The Alphamist? Great question. The name comes from two words: alpha, meaning first, prime, leader, and the word alchemist, the ancient seeker who turned lead into gold. So, the alpha, typically, you're talking about animals, you got the alpha leader, the alpha male, the leader of the pack. I'm what I would consider a quiet leader. So I've never really been a follower, although I do think being a follower is an acceptable thing. A lot of times people tell you, oh, don't be a follower. And it's really, in my opinion, a poor teaching. Everyone at some stage of life is going to be a follower. The question is having the discernment, the judgment, the discretion to know who to follow, who's going to add value to my life, who's going to help me to achieve certain goals. And then you serve kind of almost as an apprentice or a mentee. But it's okay to follow as long as you're choosing to follow the right people. So what you really should be teaching our young people and kids is don't follow the wrong people, And even in the military, you have to follow because there's always going to be someone more senior than you, has higher rank than you. And if your goal is to try to work your way up, then you have to find out what, strategies, what techniques, what traits, what characteristics are going to help you to be successful. So when you find good leaders, and I've seen a lot of leaders, especially in the military and also out of the corporate world, who are good leaders, great leaders, and also bad leaders. Truth is, you can learn from both. I probably learned more from bad leaders because I learned what to not do as a leader, and also learned to emulate what I felt good leaders, do. And the word alchemist, alchemy is kind of a metaphysical science, I guess you can call it. Once upon a time, people believe that you can turn, some base metals into gold. There's also kind of a double meaning of transforming a person's character, ego, personality, and reaching higher levels and higher heights of consciousness and awareness. So I combine the two. Alphamist kind of mean, first transformation is what we all got to do. I mentioned earlier, I am an author, and I believe in the concept of self-realization, spiritual growth. And so a lot of my teachings are based on looking within first. And so that's, again, where kind of the Alphamist comes from. All right, so together they represent the journey we're all on to take the raw material of our lives, the struggles, mistakes, triumphs, and transform them into something golden. That's what this podcast ultimately is about. Now, this podcast is going to consist of essentially 8 segments. All right, I'll name them briefly, and then we'll kind of go through the segments and elaborate on them. So the 8 segments start off with 1, Today in History. All right, each episode will kind of start off with just some historical facts of the day. We may cover politics. We may cover global impact. We may cover some U.S. history. We may cover pop culture or even hip hop. Again, born in the South Bronx, so hip hop is kind of part of my DNA. So everything I do kind of is born from that hip hop culture and nature. All right, so the first segment, Today in History. Second segment, Fool's Gold. Third segment is Crucible of Earth. The fourth segment is Forge of Water. Fifth segment is Fire of the Phoenix. Sixth segment, Whisper of Air. Actually, I got them out of order here. So first segment is Today in History. Second segment is Fool's Gold. Third segment is Crucible of Earth. Fourth segment is Forge of Water. Fifth segment is Fire of the Phoenix. The sixth segment is Whisper of Air. The seventh segment is Elixir of Ether. And the last segment, the eighth one, is called Krown Me. All right. You see a lot of elements being used in these segments, again, to kind of coincide with the concept of being an alchemist, being the alchemical transformation of an individual. I thought I wanted to tie in those tie in those elements into it. All right.
I'm the master of my fate. I'm the captain of my soul.
So, segment one, Today in History, the Sphinx speaks. Every episode will start with a little wisdom from the past, because you don't know where you're going if you don't know where you've been. And today, September 4th, comes with its own story. So on this day in 1888, George Eastman registered the trademark Kodak and received a patent for his camera that used roll film, a breakthrough that brought photography to the masses. So if we kind of think about Kodak and the old cameras back in the day, he wouldn't have been able to imagine the cameras we have today on our smartphones and all types of electronic devices, something that could fit easily in the palm of your hand. All right. Also on this day in 1988, the American search engine company Google was formally established as founders Sergey Brin and Larry Page filed incorporation papers. So they filed their papers on this day, September 4th, in 1998. In 2006, Australian wildlife conservationist and television personality Steve Irwin had achieved worldwide fame as the exuberant and risk-taking host of The Crocodile Hunter. He unfortunately was killed, stung by a venomous bull stingray that, prematurely ended his life. But he died doing something that he loved. All right. Also, on this day, 2014, American entertainer Joan Rivers passed away in New York City. Everyone knows Joan Rivers, comedian, television host. She did a lot of good things in her lifetime. In pop culture, Beyonce, yes, the Queen Bee herself, was born on this day in 1981. Hip-hop R&B culture as a whole world would never be the same when Beyonce, hit the scene. Let's see here. In 2020, Big Sean's fifth album, Detroit 2, was released and debuted at the top of the Billboard charts, 200 charts. In 2024, the rapper Rich Homie Quan passed away at the age of 34 in his Atlanta home on this day. Some say September 5th. And let's see. September 4th, 1996, Outkast ATLiens was climbing the charts, cementing Southern rap as a powerful voice in hip-hop history. We all remember what Andre 3000 had to say. The South got something to say, and they definitely saying a lot since then. I love those guys. One of the first rap groups from the South, and again, I lived in the South, but I thought that really could spit, being from New York City, the South Bronx. I'm a little biased to lyricists, but those brothers definitely came with it with their lyrical ability. A lot of people consider Andre 3000 to be one of the top in the game of all time. So props to those brothers there. And lastly here, Mother Teresa, founder of the Order of the Missionaries of Charity and winner of the 1979 Nobel Prize for Peace, was canonized by Pope Francis in 1979. A lot of people like myself grew up always hearing the name Mother Teresa. She was kind of the epitome of a person that was selfless and lived her life thinking of others. That's the story we're told. I'm sticking with that. Hopefully, she lived up to that. There's no scandal about her. All right. So again, heavily Egyptian Kemet theme to the Alphamist here. That's our Today in History. I said the Sphinx speaks. Again, the Sphinx teaches us that history lies, leaves us breadcrumbs, innovation, peace, artistry, and breaking barriers. That's the energy of today. So let's carry forward.
I'm the master of my fate. I'm the captain of my soul.
Segment 2, Fool's Gold. All right. After the Sphinx speaks, we move into Fool's Gold. This is where we talk about illusions, the things we thought were valuable but turned out to be fake shine. In life, we've all chose fool's gold at some point in time. Maybe it was a job that promised happiness but left us empty. Maybe it was a relationship that wasn't what it seemed, or even an idea of success that did not match our values. I created this segment because I know how easy it is to get caught up in the glitter instead of substance. But here's the twist. Fool's gold isn't a failure. It's a teacher. Every time you stumble, you learn what real gold looks like. And that's the point, not to avoid mistakes, but to use them. So one story I'll share, fool's gold for me. Like I said, spent 10 years in the Navy, did well, wasn't really fulfilled with that career, got out. Because I was from the South Bronx, I felt like I understood hip hop better than, 90+% of the population. I literally got to see the birth of it. I had a love for the culture. I wanted to get into the industry myself. This is late 90s. All right. Independent record labels were popping off. And I decided, hey, I'll create my own independent label. It was called World's Finest Enterprises. World spelled with the Z on the end. World's Finest Enterprises. It's myself. Alias was my stage name. Worked with some other artists. AD, Chunk Jules, my man, Spirit Cordell at the time, now known as Artie Cordell, Nat Tanel. So we were considered urban legends, kind of a loose crew, similar to like a Wu-Tang, collectively come together, put some work down, but also individually doing our own thing. I chose the name Alias because even at that stage of life, I had really walked many paths, and I always thought I had many different faces because of that, kind of like in a chameleon. I adapted to my environment. So the military, I kind of was one person. In the South Bronx, I was another person. In Miami, I was another person. In Atlanta, College Park, did my last year of high school there. I was another person. Entering corporate world, running streets. I've walked a lot of different paths. So Alias kind of embodied those different paths that I lived. And so I wanted to put that into my music. So as a songwriter, a producer, had my own studio, created this label, worked with a lot of artists, like I said, had some good success, put in some work in the South Bronx, put in some work in Charlotte, North Carolina, shout out to Charlotte, put in work down in Atlanta, started getting some good street buzz, got to the point where, some fans or followers started recognizing me in the streets, asked for autographs. A couple of things I learned from that experience, and I decided to walk away from it. One, being a creative person, I wanted to just be creative, make music. So I probably should have pivoted to more of just producer side, maybe like a Pharrell or Timbaland, something like that. But I also felt like I had a good lyrical ear as well. So I was doing both. What happens with the music industry is you really got to find that one hit. When you get that hit, you got to wear it out. You just got to do it everywhere, go on the road, go from city to city, because people really want to hear that song. And for me, it's like I didn't really want to just keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. For me, I want to come back, perform, different songs, and really giving people too much too quickly. They just want that one thing. So for me, it became too mechanical, almost like a puppet, just doing the same thing over and over. And for me, that was not fulfilling. The other aspect of that industry, the hip hop industry, rap industry, I should say, is you really got to be on the road a lot. And I had my first kid at a young age at 19. And so I didn't want to be gone or go so long that my kid only recognized me because I'm on the road all the time. So for me, although I enjoyed the creative side of hip hop, I enjoyed creating music, I didn't like those other aspects that impacted my family, impacted my, what I would call stability, my foundation. And so for me, that was fool's gold,
To listen to Apple Music, you'll need to...
All right, don't know what that was. But that's what I consider fool's gold. And what the reality is, is that something you don't really know what it is until you immerse yourself in it yourself. You know, from a distance, looking on the outside, we imagine things to be greater than what they may actually be. You don't always see the downsides of certain industries. So this second segment, Fool's Gold, is really about identifying those, you know, choices we made in life, those environments we find ourselves in, and trying to separate what's really fulfilling to us versus we're in it for the wrong reasons. All right. So that's what segment 2 is about, Fool's Gold.
I'm the master of my fate. I'm the captain of my soul.
All right. Welcome to segment 3, the Crucible of Earth. All right. Next, we ground ourselves in the Crucible of Earth. This segment is about building roots, habits, and foundations. Earth teaches us resilience. It reminds us that nothing strong is built overnight. This is where I'll share practical, down-to-earth lessons on discipline, focus, and creating stability in a chaotic world. Because without a strong foundation, everything else crumbles. Think of this as where we get real about doing the work. So I mentioned I'm an author. One of the books I wrote was called The Golden Egg: Successful Behaviors, Financial Smarts, and the 10 Quantum Principles for Prosperity. And I wrote this book because at the time I was coming across a lot of books speaking on the law of attraction. Now, while I do believe in the law of attraction, I feel like it was really being misused, mishandled, really abused by a lot of these writings, authors I was coming across. And I feel like the message they were trying to send was, if your life isn't everything you want it to be, it's because something's wrong with your thinking. And I feel like that was way over the top, too much of a generalization. Yes, I do believe your thoughts have powers. But if you put a person in a room and all they do is think of happy, positive thoughts, does not mean that's going to be their actual experience. Does not mean, you know, they're going to be attracting people with knocking on their door to give them money, and, you know, their love's going to come knocking your door. That's not really how it works. Likewise, the reverse is true as well. You sit in the room all day long doing nothing but thinking negative things. Yeah, you might not be in the best of moods, but it's not mean that somehow you're going to attract a lot of bad things into your life. So I wrote this book to bring what I felt was greater clarity to this idea and concept of the power of your thoughts. So I believe it was Buddha who said, you know, watch your thoughts before they become your words. Watch your words before they become your actions. Watch your actions before they become your habits. Watch your habits before they become your character. And watch your character before it becomes your legacy. So yes, thoughts are important. We should watch and scrutinize our thoughts. But I'll give this example. Imagine walking into a room full of people and you go into that room and think a bunch of negative thoughts. All right. Some intuitive people, some aware people might be able to pick up on your energy and feel a negative vibe from you. All right. This is true. The majority of people, the bulk, probably are so distracted and focused on other things that they might not pick up on your negative energy or your negative thoughts, because thoughts are energy. Let's be clear on that. But again, I say there's a limitation to it because our thoughts ultimately are private. You know, people aren't going around reading your mind. But let's imagine the same room, walk into that room, and now you speak out loud positive words, which can uplift people, inspire people, motivate people, or go into that same room speaking negative words, you know, yelling fire. It's going to cause a greater reaction. Why? Because your words have greater power and greater energy than your thoughts do. All right. Your thoughts create on one level of frequency or vibration. Your words actually are the first steps to manifesting your thoughts. So again, going back to watching your thoughts, absolutely, I encourage it and teach that, but also watching your words, because your words have much greater power than simply your thoughts do. And what comes after your thoughts and words? Obviously, your actions. So out of these three, your actions carry the greatest power and energy, because first you think something or visualize something, then you speak it into existence, and then you have to go out and act upon it. So if you can align your thoughts, your words, and your actions, yes, then you can create great prosperity, success for yourself. So when I wrote this book, The Golden Egg, you notice it says under the subtitle, Successful Behaviors. I listed that first. Again, stuff I learned from military, stuff I learned from being certified life coach. And I tell people watching your behaviors is the first step to creating a successful life for yourself. All right. So I intentionally put that first. You know, having been a financial advisor, I then get into financial smarts, because once you accumulate some money or wealth, you should know what to do with that money if you want to grow that money and multiply it. All right. And then the last part of that book was the 10 quantum principles for prosperity, because these 10 ideals, these 10 concepts are very important in understanding how to process and align yourself, finding your purpose, finding that enthusiasm, putting energy behind it. All this is written in the book in order to create a life of fulfillment, prosperity, in body, mind, spirit. You're going to hear that theme with me a million times. I think of all of us as 3-part beings of body, mind, and spirit. And accordingly, you should approach your life in such a fashion. Am I doing things for myself physically in my body to create the best health and experience? Am I doing things for my mind, reading the right materials, watching the right podcasts like the Alphamist? And also, am I doing things for my spirit? Whether you are a religious person or a spiritual person, church, prayer, meditation, yoga, whatever it is, you should be doing things to nurture your relationship with a higher power. That's how I feel, and that's what I espouse. All right.
I'm the master of my fate. I'm the captain of my soul.
Fourth segment. Welcome to the Forging of Water. This comes, the Forging of Water, as the fourth segment. If earth is about strength, water is about flow. Water bends, adapts, and carves paths even through stone. Here I talk about flexibility, creativity, and emotional resilience, because life is never a straight line. You've got to know how to adjust, how to pivot, and how to let go instead of drowning in resistance. This segment is about learning to trust the current and sometimes becoming the current yourself. So something I was talking about lately was the movie John Q with Denzel Washington. And we know in this movie, his son is basically has a critical health condition and essentially will die if he does not get an organ. So again, in this movie, John Q with Denzel Washington, you know, his son's facing this critical condition, basically facing death. He's under a lot of pressure from his wife, you know, finances, bills piling up, and his wife basically tells him to go do something. So not consciously, he puts himself in a situation where he's willing to go all out for his son. And the scene that stuck out to me was when Eddie, the character played by Eddie Griffith, tells Denzel, man, you know, because Denzel basically kidnaps everyone in the hospital, shuts the doors, locks them in, says, hey, we're going to do something for my son. And Eddie Griffith, you know, poses a question to him of, how do you not know this is God's will? You know, and Denzel basically said, I can't accept that. So for me, the forging of water is understanding that at the end of the day, no matter how strong we are, no matter how determined we are, some things are just not meant to be. If you believe in a higher power, then you understand that, hey, I'm a spiritual being having a human experience. And this is where the flexibility, the adaptability comes into play. Because we're not always going to make the right decision or the perfect decision. Sometimes we're going to find ourselves, you know, in situations that we're not meant to be there. You know, this is forcing a square peg into the round hole. And this is where discernment, you know, discretion, prayer, meditation, whatever it is that you exercise, hopefully leads you to discern and say, am I forcing something that's just not meant for me? You know, unfortunately, in this world, our decisions are driven by finances and money. So to get money, we would do things that may not be in our nature, may create some negative consequences for us. And we have to have the wisdom to be able to say, maybe I need to pivot. Maybe I need to shift. Maybe I need to evolve and adapt. And that's ultimately what forging of water is about, being fluid and adapting to situations. And if you are on the right path and you do have a particular goal, knowing how to achieve that goal, but maybe I need to go about it slightly differently in order to achieve that goal. So that's what that segment 4 is about. forging of water.
I'm the master of my fate. I'm the captain of my soul.
All right, segment 5, the fire of the Phoenix. Of course, sometimes life isn't gentle. Sometimes it burns everything down. That's where the fire of the Phoenix comes in. This segment is about rebirth, rising from ashes, reclaiming your power, and refusing to let endings define you. We've all had those moments, heartbreaks, losses, failures that felt final. But the Phoenix reminds us every ending is just a new beginning in disguise. This is the segment for courage and comeback stories. So again, we've all had experiences in life that were out of our control, either wrong place, wrong time, or as children, our parents make decisions about the household or where you're going to live, or sometimes moving to different schools, or, being laid off from a job due to no fault of your own. All of us are going to face some adversity in life. I'll share a quick story. I was living in Atlanta and just going through a dark spell. Just seemed like a dark cloud was over, my head all the time. And at this point in time, a girlfriend had broken up with me. I had this job that was basically paying my rent, and I lost that job. So now the free rent was basically gone because that job was gone. I was driving a car that was not reliable. I may take it out, drive a mile or two, and the car would literally just cut off in the middle of the street. And I would have to pull over to the side of the road and maybe sit there for 15, 20 minutes, and then the car would restart. So after going through that numerous times, it's got to the point where I don't want to drive this car anymore. So I would walk to the grocery store. I would do as many things I could that didn't require this vehicle because it was just so unreliable. And like I said, I'm out of work. The cash ain't coming. And, it just had to make smarter decisions. So in short, one thing just kept adding up, coming worse. So because the finances were tight, you start turning off all the non-essential, luxuries like cable TV, budgeting your money, eating sandwiches instead of eating, high quality food. And I remember just being laying in the bed and staring at the ceiling because now the electricity was getting cut off. I had to go to court, stand in front of a judge, ask me why I'm not paying my rent. It's like, hey, Your Honor, I'm doing everything I can. It just ain't happening right now. So he gave me some time to come up with it or else. And essentially I called an ex and with no real intention, just asked about a couple weeks to hang out with. And she's like, I haven't spoken to him in a while. Gave me the number. I reached out. The wife answered the phone. We chatted for a while, caught up. Now, granted, I hadn't seen her spoken to these people in 10 years. Asked about her husband. She's like, we're not together anymore. Gave me his number and told me he was living in Atlanta. This is where I was living at the time. So I'm like, okay, that's what's up. Gave me his number, called him. We chatted for a moment, caught up. He asked me what was going on in my life. I just shared the news with him because, hey, this is what's really going on. Not that I was seeking anything from him. And when I shared the story, he was like, hey, man, I got much to offer you, but I got a small trailer. You come scoop up your most important items. I can't get everything, but you can get your clothes, maybe some TV, radio, whatever. So we did that. And this is literally the night before the sheriff was coming the next day to evict me. So I got my most important items out and he put me up in his spare room, gave me about 30 days or so. And that was enough time for me to basically start over fresh, find a new job, start to save up money, start to rebuild my credit, all these other things. So this was kind of a rebirth moment for me. I share the story to say that was a very dark time. And in those times, although I've never been suicidal, in that moment, I kind of stared at the ceiling and I'm like, I can see how someone else could possibly get to that length where they feel like being dead or not being here is better than what I'm experiencing going through. So that's always stuck with me. And I remember that to be empathetic and sympathetic to people because you don't know what people are going through. People don't walk around on their foreheads telling you or the tough times they're going through. And even if they are, we're all going through our stuff as well. So it's like you can only put so much energy into other people's challenges when you're facing your own stuff. But again, this friend of mine, and at the end of the day, I give credit and props to that friend, but ultimately I gain greater faith in God, because I do believe God works through human beings, and sometimes we are angels to others. We don't know what makes us say something. We don't know what makes us offer help or assistance. We don't know what pulls on our heartstrings and makes us do things sometimes. When we leave in the moment and we just do it because it felt like the right thing to do, I think we're like angels to each other and can be. But again, I share that story to say that was a moment in time. That was a rebirth for me. And surely enough, within, I don't know, a matter of months, I was able to get my own new apartment, condo, rebuild credit. And a couple of things I learned from that experience was that which does not kill you makes you stronger. And you realize just how strong and resilient you can be. And when you go through bad times again, because I feel like adversity is always going to kind of show its face, you realize that this ain't so bad. You know, when you go through some real tough times, you realize this ain't so bad. I can endure this and still keep a level head and even keep your spirits up. So that's what Fire the Phoenix is about.
I'm the master of my fate. I'm the captain of my soul.
Segment 6, the Whisper of Air. After the fire comes breath. The Whisper of Air is where we pause. It's about clarity, perspective, and insight. This segment will highlight the power of slowing down, listening to your intuition, and finding fresh ideas. Air isn't seen, but it's felt. It's the inspiration that clears mental fog and gives you vision. Sometimes the smallest whisper can change your entire direction. That's what we're going to explore here with Whisper of Air. Again, this is what I mentioned earlier, body, mind, spirit. This is where being still, being quiet, taking time to be alone, putting the distractions, the electronic devices, the TVs, the cell phones, putting them away sometimes, just sitting and being still, being in nature, we can connect with the earth. We can connect with higher energies and higher spirit that speaks to us. You know, I believe we are all built with a compass in our hearts. And when we're able to follow that, call it instinct, call it intuition, call it gut feeling, it's there to guide us through life. So that's why I call this one the Whisper of Air, just being more in tune and seeking that guidance.
I'm the master of my fate. I'm the captain of my soul.
All right. Welcome to segment 7, the Elixir of Ether. Next, we step into the Elixir of Ether. This is the big picture stuff, purpose, meaning, and the spiritual side of life. Ether connects everything. It's not just about what you do, but why you do it. This segment is where we dive into higher truths, inner growth, and the pursuit of legacy. It's not religion, it's reflection. It's about tapping into that part of yourself that wants more than money, more than fame, more than likes on a screen. It's about living a life that matters. All right. This is finding, I believe we all have born with unique talents. I believe with, they say 10,000 hours of dedication to a particular, trait, quality, skill, talent helps make you an expert. And while I believe we all can achieve significant things, I feel like we're all kind of born with certain talents that say who we are, and if we nurture and develop those things, then not only will you find success, but you'll find greater fulfillment for what you do. And they say when you find something you love, you'll never work a day in your life. So this is what the Elixir of Ether is about.
I'm the master of my fate. I'm the captain of my soul.
And the last segment is Krown Me. All right. Finally, every episode ends with Krown Me. This is the victory lap. This is where we bring everything together and place that symbolic crown on your head. It's a reminder that you are sovereign over your own life. You have the power to define your path, rise above setbacks, and live with purpose. Krown Me is where the journey comes full circle. From fool's gold to mastery, from ashes to ascension, it's about stepping into your role as king or queen of your destiny. Each episode of The Alphamist, again, will take you through these 8 segments. And the desire, the goal, again, is to build confidence, build knowledge, build awareness, and remind you that we are made in the image and likeness of a greater, higher power. We are divine beings. We are spiritual beings. And I use the terms king or queen symbolically or metaphorically. It's not about dominion over any other person or thing. It's really about dominion over yourself, your lower nature versus your higher nature, your wisdom versus your ignorance, how we treat others. This is ultimately what about being a wise and virtuous king or queen is about. So every segment we'll end with that. And that's intentional because we have to hear it time and time again. They say motivation doesn't last, which is true, but so do showers. This is why we recommend doing it daily. You have to reinforce it. And the more you reinforce it, you start to believe it. And the more you believe it, the more you start to actualize it and start to live and carry yourself as such. All right. So this is the Alphamist in a nutshell. So last but not least, why you should subscribe. So that's the Alphamist. 8 segments, 1 journey, and a whole lot of growth, wisdom, and fun along the way. Why did I create this? Because we're all searching for gold. And I believe that through storytelling, reflection, humor, and history, we can find the wisdom to transform ourselves. This podcast is for anyone who's ever stumbled, fallen, gotten back up, and still dares to believe there's more. If that's you, hit subscribe. Join me every week, every day, every episode as we uncover lessons, share stories, and build the courage to keep rising because your crown is waiting and it belongs to you. Thanks for listening. Look forward to sharing this experience with you. I want you to send me questions, share comments, share with your friends, share with someone you think needs a positive message, someone that needs inspiration, motivation, and even beyond that, the skills, the wherewithal to implement so that you can truly change your life. Thanks for listening. Look forward to growing with you. And oh yeah, by the way, wear your crown.
If you can feel the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth and everything that's in it. And which is more, you'll be a man, my son. Yo, would you stop?